Good morning to all. Welcome to Karnataka LMS. I am Nagvineni, Assistant Professor of English, Department of Collegiate and Technical Education. In today's class, I am going to explain Chapter 4 and 5 from the novel Silas Marner written by George Eliot, described by the University of Mysore to the secondary BA Optional English CBCS course post semester 2020-21. The title of the paper is Victorian Fiction. In the chapter 4, we are going to know about Dunstan-Cass robbery of Marner's money. In the chapter 5, we are going to know about the reaction of Marner to the robbery. 4ನೇ ಚಾಪ್ಟ್ರಲ್ಲಿ ಡನ್ಸ್ಟನ್-ಕಾಸ್ ಮಾರ್ನರ್ ಹಣವನ್ನು ಕದ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋದು, ದರೋಡೆ ಮಾಡೋದನ್ನು ನೋಡ್ತೀವಿ. 5ನೇ ಚಾಪ್ಟ್ರಲ್ಲಿ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಮಾರ್ನರ್ ರಿಯಾಕ್ಷನ್ ಏನು ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನು ನೋಡ್ತೀವಿ. ಡನ್ಸ್ಟನ್-ಕಾಸ್ ನಾವು ಕಳೆದ ಇದರಲ್ಲಿ ಚಾಪ್ಟರ್ ತಿಳ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ವಿ. ಅಗ್ರೀಡ್ ಟು ಟೇಕ್ ಹಿಸ್ ಬ್ರದರ್ಸ್ ಹಾರ್ಸ್ ಟು ದ ಹಂಟ್ ಟು ಸೆಲ್ ಇಟ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ he set off early in the morning. And when he came near the stone pit, two thoughts came to his mind. He thought of the dreariness of the place, the stone pit, and the muddy water. And the second thought was that of the money hoarded by Silas Marner. He was so surprised. What made him so far not to suggest Godfrey to or frighten or persuade that old fellow to make him lend the money on the excellent security of his prospects. Now it occurred to him that Marner's hoard was a large enough money to fulfill Godfrey's needs, as well as it would also accommodate him with some advantage. And with this thought, he had almost turned his horse towards home to inform this to Godfrey. But immediately he made up his mind not to go, because he strongly felt that Godfrey would readily accept this suggestion, because he was unwilling to part with the horse Wildfire, and he did not want to give Godfrey that pleasure. ಗಾಡ್ಫ್ರೆಗೆ ಆ ಒಂದು ಸಂತೋಷ ಕೊಡೋಕ್ಕೆ ಅವ್ನಿಗೆ ಇಷ್ಟ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಐ ಪ್ರಿಫರ್ಡ್ ದಟ್ ಮಾಸ್ಟರ್ ಗಾಡ್ಫ್ರೆ ಶುಡ್ ಬಿ ವೆಕ್ಸ್ಡ್. ಮಾಸ್ಟರ್ ಗಾಡ್ಫ್ರೆ ಕಷ್ಟಪಡಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಅವನು ಡಿಸೈಡ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾನೆ. ಮೋರ್ ಓವರ್ ಎಂಜಾಯ್ಡ್ ದಿಸ್ ಆಪರ್ಚುನಿಟಿ ಆಫ್ ಸೆಲ್ಫ್ ಇಂಪಾರ್ಟೆಂಟ್ ಕಾನ್ಷಿಯಸ್ನೆಸ್ ಆಫ್ having to sell a horse, an opportunity to drive a bargain, swaggering, and possibly to take somebody into inn and have the satisfaction of becoming an attendant on selling his brother's horse. ಈ ಕುದುರೆ ಮಾರೋದಕ್ಕೆ, ಬಾರ್ಗೇನ್ ಮಾಡಲಿಕ್ಕೆ, ಗಿರಾಕಿ ಹುಡ್ಕೋದಕ್ಕೆ, ಅವ್ನ ಪ್ರತಿಭೆ ತೋರಿಸ್ಲಿಕ್ಕೆ, ಅಣ್ಣನ ಕುದುರೆ ಮಾರಿಸ್ಕೊಟ್ಟೆ ಅನ್ನೋ ಒಂದು ಗೌರವ ಪಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋಕ್ಕೆ ಅದೊಂದು ಅವಕಾಶ. ಅದನ್ನು ಬಿಡೋಕ್ಕೆ ಇಷ್ಟ ಇಲ್ಲ. Luckily, he found both Bryce and Keating. Bryce was surprised to see his brother's horse with him. He told a lie that he had exchanged his horse with that of his brother in order to settle some account. Dunstan knew, Bryce knew that he was telling lie, and he said that he had an eye on the mare of Jartins. Jartins kuda nange ಬೇಕಾಗಿತ್ತು, but to settle some account with my brother, I had to accept Wildfire. And though Wildfire was offered a bid of 150, £150 ಕೊಡ್ತೀನಿ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದರು ಹಿಂದೆ ನನಗೆ ಫ್ಲಿಟ್ಟನಲ್ಲಿ ಕ್ರಾಮ್ಲಾಕ್ ಕಡೆಯವರು, ನಾನು ಮಾರಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂದ. ಬ್ರೈಸ್ ಅಫ್ಕೋರ್ಸ್ ಡಿವೈನ್ ದಟ್ ಡನ್ಸ್ಟನ್ ವಾಂಟೆಡ್ ಟು ಸೆಲ್ ದ ಹಾರ್ಸ್. ಡನ್ಸ್ಟನ್ಗೆ ಕುದುರೆ ಮಾರಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಅನಿಸ್ತಿದೆ ಅಂತ ಗೊತ್ತಾಯಿತು. ಡನ್ಸ್ಟನ್ ನ್ಯೂ ದಟ್ ಹಿ ಡಿವೈನ್ಡ್ ಇಟ್. ಡನ್ಸ್ಟನ್ಗೂ ಗೊತ್ತಾಯಿತು, ಅವ್ನಿಗೆ ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗಿದೆ ಅನ್ನೋದು. So they both knew that they were on the first stage of the bargain. And Bryce said ironically that he wanted to keep his horse even though it was getting a bid of half of its worth, and he would be lucky if he got 100. ಅರ್ಧಂಬರ್ಧ ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಇದು ಬಿಡ್ ತೊಗೊಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀರಾ, ಲಕ್ಕಿ ನಿಮಗೆ 100 ಕೂಡ ಸಿಗಲ್ಲ, £150 ಕೊಡ್ತೀನಿ ಅಂದರೂ ನೀನು ಕೊಡಲ್ಲ ಅಂದರೆ ಆಶ್ಚರ್ಯ ಆಗ್ತದೆ ಅಂತ ವ್ಯಂಗ್ಯವಾಗಿ ಹೇಳ್ತಾನೆ. The transaction ended in the purchase of horse by Bryce for 120. £120 ಕೊಟ್ಟು ಕೊಂಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋದು ಅಂತ ತೀರ್ಮಾನ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಬಟ್ ಟು ಬಿ ಪೇಯ್ಡ್ ಆನ್ ದ ಬಾದರ್ಲಿ ಸ್ಟೇಬಲ್ with the delivery of Wildfire safe and sound. ಇದೇ ಥರ ಸೇಫ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಸೌಂಡಾಗಿ ಆ ಬಾದಲಿ ಫೈರಲ್ಲಿ ಸ್ಟೇಬಲಲ್ಲಿ ಅವನು ಅದನ್ನು ಮಾರಬೇಕು, ಕೊಡಬೇಕು. ಆಗ ಅವನು ವುಡ್ ಹ್ಯಾಂಡ್ ಹಿಮ್ ಓವರ್ ದ ಮನಿ ಅಂತ ತೀರ್ಮಾನ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಡನ್ ಸೇ ಇಫ್ ಯುವರ್ ವೈಸ್ ವುಡ್ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ hired a horse and returned to Badarle and would have hired a horse and returned home with the money in his pocket. But he was encouraged by the confidence in his luck. ಅದೃಷ್ಟದ ಬಗೆಗೆ ಅವನಿಗೆ ತುಂಬ ನಂಬಿಕೆ ಹೆಚ್ಚಾಯಿತು. and the distraught of brandy from his pocket pistol at the conclusion of the bargain, he wanted to go for a run. ಅವನು ಮುಂದುವರಿಯೋಕ್ಕೆ he wanted to go for a run. ಆ ಹಂಟಲ್ಲಿ ಭಾಗವಹಿಸ್ಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಅವನು ಭಾಗವಹಿಸ್ತಾನೆ. he took one fence too many and got his horse pieced with a hedge stake. ಆದರೆ ಅವನು he took one fence too many and he's got pieced with a hedge stake. He was escaped from any injury, but his horse panted is lost. ಇವನಿಗೇನು ಗಾಯ ಆಗಿಲ್ಲ, ಆದರೆ ಕುದುರೆ ಗಾಯ ಆಯಿತು, ಸತ್ತೋಯ್ತು. and he immediately got up as fast as he could and reached the coppice on his right and thought that he could not reach Badarle without encountering any member of the hunt. ಬಾದರ್ಲೆನ ಅದಿರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಯಾವುದೇ ಮೆಂಬರ್ನ ಎದುರಿಸ್ದಲ್ಲೇ ಹೋಗೋಕ್ಕಾಗಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ ಗೊತ್ತಾಯಿತು. he decided to hire a horse and ride home. For to walk many miles without a gun in his hand and among an ordinary road was out of question to him. He would meet any participant of the hunt. He had no gun and he was unable to walk home, so he wanted to hire the horse. And he was worried much that he did not worry much about this bad news to Godfrey, but because he had that offer of Marner's money in his mind, and he was confident that he could run Godfrey into anything. Godfreyಗೆ ಯಾವ ರೀತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೂ ನಾನು ಬಾರ್ಗೇನಿಗೆ ಹೇಳ್ಕೊತೀನಿ ನಂಬಿಕೆ ಬೇರೆ ಇದೆ. and he thought that it was difficult to walk, and he felt afraid that if he met someone on his way, so any acquaintance on his way home, he would cut a sorry figure. But he had a whip in his hand to convince such people that he was on his horse. ಕುದುರೆ ಮೇಲೆ ಬಂದಿನ ತೋರ್ಸೋಕ್ಕೆ ವಿಪ್ ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದಾನೆ. that was the whip of Godfrey with gold handle. It was the handsome whip, and he always wanted to carry this whip with him. And there was the name of Godfrey cut in deep letters on the gold handle. ಆ ಚಿನ್ನದ ಹ್ಯಾಂಡ್ಲ್ ಮೇಲೆ ಗಾಡ್ಫ್ರೇ ಹೆಸರು ಕೆತ್ತಿದೆ. ಈ ಮೈನ್ಯೂಟ್ ಡೀಟೇಲ್ಸ್ನ ನೀವು ಗಮನಿಸ್ತಾ ಹೋಗಿ ಮುಂದಕ್ಕೆ ನಿಮಗೆ ಇದು ಅನುಕೂಲ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. and he was lucky. Nobody he very soon reached Ravelin lanes without having met a soul. And there was fog, heavy fog. It was an added fact to his good luck. And it was becoming dark. He found the stone pit. He avoided from falling into it. Stone pit ಸಿಗುತ್ತೆ. The ground was slippery, and anyhow with the help of his whip he managed to find the ground, and by that time he saw the light from the cottage of Silas Marner. During his walk, his mind was full of the thought of cottage and the money that Marner had hoarded in the cottage, and the way of cajoling or convincing that old man, the old weaver, to depart or lend this money to Dunstan, because he had no idea of his way of calculation of interest. ಅವನು ಯಾವ ರೀತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಅರ್ಥಮೆಟಿಕಲ್ ಕ್ಯಾಲ್ಕುಲೇಷನ್ ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದಾನೆ ಬಡ್ಡಿ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಅಂತ ನನಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ. and moreover he could not convince him about the security, because he knows very well that security was nothing but a vague means of cheating a man by making believe that he would be paid. ನಿಂಗೆ ದುಡ್ಡು ಕೊಡ್ತೀನಪ್ಪ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ ಸುಳ್ಳು ಹೇಳೋದು, ಮೋಸ ಮಾಡೋದು ಅಷ್ಟೇನೆ. ಡನ್ಸ್ಟನ್ ಮೇಡ್ ಅಪ್ ಹಿಸ್ ಮೈಂಡ್ ಟು ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಎ ಡೈಲಾಗ್ ವಿತ್ ಸೈಲಾಸ್. ಈಗ ಡಿಸೈಡ್ ಮಾಡ್ದ ಸೈಲಾಸ್ನ ಹೇಗಾದರೂ ಮಾಡಿ ಕನ್ವಿನ್ಸ್ ಮಾಡಿಬಿಟ್ಟು ಆ ಹಣವನ್ನು ಪಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಬೇಕು ಅಂತ. he reached the door of Silas, and he wanted to shock Silas by making loud sound ಆನ್ ದ ಡೋರ್. ಮಲಗಿರ್ತಾನೆ, ಜೋರಾಗಿ ಬಾಗಿಲು ಬೆಳೆದ ಅವನಿಗೆ ಎದುರಿಸ್ಬಿಡೋಣ ಅಂತ ಅಂದ್ಕೊಳ್ತಾನೆ. He knocked on the door loudly, but he received no answer. And he put his fingers into the latch and tried to open the latch. He knocked again, but he received no answer. ಮತ್ತೆ ಬಡಿತಾನೆ, ಆದರೆ ಅವನಿಗೆ ಉತ್ತರ ಸಿಗಲ್ಲ. And he was so surprised. He was in Mysore. How could he forget about switching off the lantern or light? ಅವನು ಹೇಗೆ ಅವನು ಪುಟ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಲೈಟ್ ಆರ್ ಲ್ಯಾಂಟರ್ನ್ ಯಾಕೆ ಅವನು ಆರಿಸಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂದ್ಕೊಳ್ತಾನೆ. ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ he knocked still more loudly. Without passing a reply, pushed his fingers through the latch hole and then the door was opened. The flung opened. ಅವನು ಬೋಲ್ಟ್ ಹಾಕಿಲ್ಲ, ಬೀಗನೂ ಹಾಕಿಲ್ಲ, ಲ್ಯಾಚ್ ಕೂಡ ಹಾಕಿಲ್ಲ, ಬಾಗಿಲು ಓಪನ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಇಮಿಡಿಯೇಟ್ಲಿ he saw a bright fire burning. And in that light of fire he saw the bed, loom, 3 chairs, table. But Marner was not there. Nothing but the bright fire on the brick hearth was more welcome to inviting to Dance. Dance was so happy to see the fire, and he walked in and seated himself by it. And in front of the fire he saw a small bit of pork suspended iron from the kettle hanger by a string passed through the large key door. A large key door strinಗಿಂದ ಪೋರ್ಕನ್ನು, ಹಂದಿ ಮಾಂಸನ ಚುಚ್ಚಿಬಿಟ್ಟು ಅದನ್ನ ಸುತ್ತಬಿಟ್ಟು ಅವಲೇ ಮುಂದೆ ನೇತಾಕಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಆ ಕೆಟಲ್ ಹ್ಯಾಂಗರ್ಗೆ. ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಇಟ್ ವಾಸ್ ದ ಪ್ರಿಮಿಟಿವ್ ವೇ ಆಫ್ ಕುಕಿಂಗ್ ದ ಪೋರ್ಕ್. ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ದ ಪೋರ್ಕ್ ಹ್ಯಾಡ್ ಬಿನ್ hung on the farthest end of the hanger in order to prevent it from roasting rapidly during the absence of the owner. Dunstan thought if the end staring if the old staring simpleton, ನೋಡಿ, old staring simpleton, if he did not have hot meat for his supper, then ಅವನಿಗೆ ಊಟಕ್ಕೆ ಬಿಸಿ ಮಾಂಸನ ಸಿಗಲ್ವಾ ಅಂದ್ಕೊಂಡ. I had heard that he lived only on moldy bread on purpose of checking his appetite. He thought over where Silas had gone at that time on such an evening, leaving his supper in that half stage of preparation. ಎಲ್ಲೋಗಿರ್ಬೋದು ಅಂತ ಅವನಿಗೆ ಆಶ್ಚರ್ಯ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಆಮೇಲೆ he remembered his own difficulty of reaching the cottage. He might have been to fetch some fuel and might have slipped into the stone pit ಅಂತ he imagines, ಕಲ್ಪನೆ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ತಾನೆ. ಫ್ಯೂಯಲ್ ತರಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋಗಿ ಸ್ಟೋನ್ ಪಿಟ್ಟಿಗೆ ಬಿದ್ದೋಗಿರ್ಬೋದು ಅಂತ. And it was really an interesting idea if he died to have such a new consequences. He thought of so many questions came to his mind. If the weaver was dead, who had a right to his money? ಅವ್ನು ಸತ್ತರೆ ದುಡ್ಡಿಗೆ ಯಾರು ಇದ್ದಾರೆ ಹಕ್ಕುದಾರರು? Who would know where his money was hidden? ಅವನು ಹಣ ಎಲ್ಲಿದೆ ಅಂತ ಯಾರಿಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಾಗತ್ತೆ? Who would know that anybody had come to take it away? ಯಾರಿಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಾಗತ್ತೆ? ಯಾರು ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೂ ಬಂದು ದುಡ್ಡು ತೊಗೊಂಡೋದ್ರೆ ಯಾರಿಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಾಗುತ್ತೆ? Now his mind was possessed with the only question, where is his money? He had heard that usually the cottagers would keep their money in 3 places, in the thatch or the bed or a hole on the floor. And there was no thatch in the house of Marner. And he was about to go to bed. At that time his eyes eagerly fell on the floor. ಅವನ ಕಣ್ಣುಗಳು ನೆಲದ ಮೇಲೆ ಬೀಳ್ತವೆ. And found the bricks shining brightly under the sprinkling of sand. ಮರಳಿನ ಕೆಳಗಡೆ ಇಟ್ಟಿಗೆಗಳು ಕೆಂಪಗೆ ಹೊಳಿತಾ ಇದ್ದಾವೆ ಬೆಂಕಿ ಬೆಳಕಲ್ಲಿ. So there was only one spot which was covered with sand. ಅದೊಂದು ಜಾಗದಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾತ್ರ ಮರಳಿದೆ. And with the marks of finger. It was quite near to loom. And Dunstan moved there, and with the help of his whip swept off the sand and loosened the bricks, and hastily lifted up the bricks and saw 2 leathern bags full of guineas. And it happened it took hardly 5 minutes to do all these things, but he felt as if he were there for a long while, and he was not sure if Marner might be alive or might re-enter the cottage any moment. He felt an undefinable dread within himself. Immediately he went out, to he decided to go out, hasten out, and then to decide what to do with the bags. And he closed the door behind him and walked into the darkness, holding bags with both the hands. ಎರಡೂ ಕೈಲಿ ಹಿಡ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದಾನೆ. He was unable to hold the whip, which was his favorite whip. By this time, Silas was hardly 100 yards away when Dunstan left his house. And he was so, he returned with a fresh mind because of the change. The novelist generalizes this in these words. I quote, "The sense of security more frequently springs from habit than from conviction." ಯಾವಾಗಲೂ we feel very secured. The sense of security will frequently spring from habit than conviction. ಅಭ್ಯಾಸದಿಂದ ನಾವು ಒಂದೇ ರೀತಿಯ ಜೀವನಕ್ಕೆ ಅಭ್ಯಾಸ ಆಗಿಬಿಟ್ಟಿದ್ರೆ ಏನು ಅಪಾಯ ಬಂದಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂದರೆ ಏನೂ ಆಗಲ್ಲ ಅಂದ್ಕೊಂಡ್ಬಿಡ್ತೀವಿ, rather than conviction. And this subsists after such a change in the conditions as might have been expected to suggest alarm. ಆದ್ರೂ ಕೆಲವು ಸಾರಿ certain changes in the conditions suggests us some alarm, ಎಚ್ಚರಿಕೆಯನ್ನು ಸೂಚಿಸುತ್ತೆ. ಆದರೆ because of our habit, that habit subsists and make us forget or be careless about such alarms. The lapse of time during which a given event has not happened is in this logic of habit constantly alleged as a reason why the event should never happen. ಈ ರೀತಿ ನಮಗೆ ದೀರ್ಘ ಸಮಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು ಘಟನೆ ಆಗಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂದರೆ ಏನೂ ಆಗಲ್ಲ ಅಂದ್ಕೊಂಡ್ಬಿಡ್ತೀವಿ ನಾವು. ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ದಿಸ್ ಲ್ಯಾಪ್ಸ್ ಆಫ್ ಟೈಮ್ ಇಟ್ ಸೆಲ್ಫ್ ಸಜೆಸ್ಟ್ ದಟ್ ಇಷ್ಟು ದಿನ ಏನೂ ಆಗಿಲ್ಲ, ಇನ್ನು ಮುಂದೆ ಏನಾರು ಆಗ್ಬೋದು. ಪ್ರಿಸೈಸ್ಲಿ ಆಡೆಡ್ ಕಂಡೀಷನ್ ವಿಚ್ ಮೇಕ್ಸ್ ದ ಈವೆಂಟ್ ಇಮ್ಮಿನೆಂಟ್, ದಟ್ ಈವೆಂಟ್ ಮೇ ರಿಪೀಟ್ ಅಂತ ದಿಸ್ ಲ್ಯಾಪ್ಸ್ ಆಫ್ ಟೈಮ್ ಇಟ್ ಸೆಲ್ಫ್ ಸಜೆಸ್ಟ್. ಇಷ್ಟು ದಿನ ಏನೂ ಆಗಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂದರೆ ಏನಾದ್ರು ಆಗ್ಬೋದು ಅಂತ ಇಂಡೈರೆಕ್ಟ್ಲಿ ಇಟ್ ವಿಲ್ ಅಲಾರ್ಮ್ ಅಸ್. But a man will tell you that he has worked in a mine for 40 years unhurt by an accident as a reason why he should apprehend no danger, though the roof is beginning to sink, and it is often observable that the older a man gets, the more difficult it is to him to retain a believing conceptions of his own death. 40 ವರ್ಷ ಗಣಿಲಿ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದು 40 ವರ್ಷದಿಂದ ಏನೂ ಆಗಿಲ್ಲ, ಏನೂ ಡೇಂಜರ್ ಇಲ್ಲ ಅಂತಲೇ, though the roof is sinking. In the same way, this influence of habit is necessarily strong in a man. ಅದು ಸೈಲಾಸ್ ಮ್ಯಾರ್ನರ್ ಥರದವ್ರ ಜೀವನದಲ್ಲಿ ದಿಸ್ ಇನ್ಫ್ಲುಯೆನ್ಸ್ ಆಫ್ ಹ್ಯಾಬಿಟ್ ಈಸ್ ನೆಸೆಸರಿಲಿ ಸ್ಟ್ರಾಂಗ್. ಮ್ಯಾರ್ನರ್ ಹೂ ಸಾ ನೋ ನ್ಯೂ ಪೀಪಲ್, ಹೊಸೊಬ್ರು ನೋಡಿಲ್ಲ, ಹರ್ಡ್ ಆಫ್ ನೋ ನ್ಯೂ ಈವೆಂಟ್ಸ್, ಹೊಸ ಘಟನೆಗಳ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ, ಟು ಕೀಪ್ ಅಲೈವ್ ಇನ್ ದ ಐಡಿಯಾ ಆಫ್ ದ ಅನ್ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪೆಕ್ಟೆಡ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ದ ಚೇಂಜ್ಫುಲ್. And I explained simply enough why his mind could be at ease, though he had led his house and his treasure more defenseless than usual. That's why he left his house and treasure in a more defenseless condition than usual. He satisfactorily entered and sat in front of the fire to warm himself. The little bit of pork present was from Miss Priscilla Lametta, to whom he had carried a handsome piece of linen in the morning. ಆ ಪೋರ್ಕ್ ಅವನಿಗೆ ಪ್ರಿಸಿಲ್ಲಾ ಲ್ಯಾಮೆಟರ್ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿರ್ತಾರೆ ಪ್ರೆಸೆಂಟಾಗಿ. ಓನ್ಲಿ ಆನ್ ಸಚ್ ಅಕೇಶನ್ಸ್ ಹಿ ವುಡ್ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಮೇಡ್, ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಇಫ್ ಹಿ ಹ್ಯಾಡ್ ಮೇಡ್ ಹಿ ವುಡ್ ಕೀಪ್ ಇಟ್ ಫಾರ್ ಸಪ್ಪರ್. Supper was his favorite meal because he could have it after having the pleasure of seeing his guineas, counting his guineas. That evening when he began to prepare the supper, he suddenly remembered that he needed a piece of twine. ನನಗೆ ಬೇಕಾಗಿತ್ತು to start the work early in the morning. So in that half stage of cooking, he left his pork and went out. In the morning he could not buy it because he did not remember, and moreover he did not like to go around in the village in the morning and waste his time. So in the stage of half preparation of his supper, he went out to buy it. He unlocked the door because the string of the door key was knotted around the bit of pork. So he drew his pork to the extremity of the hanger and set out with his lantern and his old sack around his shoulder. ಒಂದು ಲ್ಯಾಂಟರ್ನ್ ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡು ಒಂದು ಹಳೆ ಚೀಲ ಓದ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೋಗಿರ್ತಾನೆ. With the two questions he was unanxious. What thief would find his way to the stone pits on such a night as this? ಯಾವ ಕಳ್ಳ ಬರ್ತಾನೆ ಈ ಸ್ಟೋನ್ ಪಿಟ್ಗೆ ಈಗ ರಾತ್ರಿನಲ್ಲಿ? ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ವೈ ಶುಡ್ he come on this particular night? ಈ ರಾತ್ರಿನೇ ಯಾಕೆ ಬರ್ತಾನೆ? When he had never come through all the 15 years before. This is the security provided to him by his habit of living in isolation. And Silas, when he began to tend the pork, he thought that it would be late to finish the supper. So he wanted to count his guineas, and he wanted to enjoy the sight of guineas having the supper, eating the meat. It was like the best wine in a feast. His guineas were his gold wine in a feast. And he unsuspectingly swept away the sand and removed the bricks. His heart leaped violently at the sight of the empty hole. ಮರಳು ತೆಗೆದು ನೋಡ್ತಾನೆ, ಬ್ರಿಕ್ ತೆಗೆದು ಹೃದಯ ಹೊಡೆದೋದಂಗೆ ಆಗೋಯ್ತು. ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಖಾಲಿ ಆಗಿದೆ, ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಆ ಗುಂಡಿಲಿ ಏನೂ ಇಲ್ಲ. He could not believe his gold was gone, but was terrified and made an effort to end that terror. ಚಿನ್ನ ಹೊರಟೋಗಿದೆ. ಆದರೆ ಆ ಚಿನ್ನ ಹೋಗಿದೆ ಅನ್ನೋ ಬಯಕೆಂತ he was making an attempt to end that terror. ಆ ಭಯನ ಹೋಗ್ಲಾಡ್ಸೋಲ್ಲ ಪ್ರಯತ್ನ ಪಡ್ತಿದ್ದಾನೆ. He thought that his eyes had deceived him. ಕಣ್ಣು ಮೋಸ ಮಾಡಿದೆ ಅಂದ್ಕೊಳ್ತಾನೆ. Again he with his trembling hands searched the hall, but he found nothing. And he tried to remember if he had out of a sudden resolution last night might have kept somewhere, but he unforgotten. No, nothing he could remember. If a man falling into dark water seeks a momentary footing even on sliding stones. ನೀರಿಗೆ ಬೀಳ್ತಾರೇನೋ, ಮೇಲಿಗೆ ಬರಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಒಂದು ಮೊಮೆಂಟ್ರಿ ಫುಟ್ಟಿಂಗ್, ಒಂದು ಸ್ಲೈಡಿಂಗ್ ಸ್ಟೋನ್ ಜಾತಾರ ಕಲ್ ಸಿಕ್ಕರೂ ಸಾಕು ಅಂತ ಅವನು ಬಯಸ್ತಾನ, ಆಸೆ ಪಟ್ಟನಲ್ಲ. ಹಾಗೆ Silas was trying to give many reasons by acting as if he believed in false hopes, warded off the moments of despair. He was trying to ward off these moments of despair, and he searched in every corner and turned his bed over, shook it and kneaded it. He looked in his brick, I unquote here, even woven where he laid his sticks. ಎಲ್ಲ ಕಡೆ ಹುಡುಕ್ತಾನೆ, ಸಿಗಲಿಲ್ಲ. Again he made the efforts was not to accept the terrible truth. He made all the efforts not to accept this terrible truth. But he looked at all the objects of straining his eyes in vain. ಎಲ್ಲ ವಸ್ತುಗಳನ್ನ ನೋಡ್ತಾನೆ, but only he strained his eyes, and holding his head with his trembling hands, ತಲೆಯನ್ನು ಹಿಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಜೋರಾಗಿ screamed. It was the cry of desolation. ಆ ಒಂಟಿತನದ ಒಂದು ಕಿರುಚಾಟ ಅದು and it relieved him from this maddening pressure of the truth. ಕಿರ್ಚಿದ್ರಿಂದ ಈ ಒಂದು ಸತ್ಯ ಅವನಿಗೆ ಹುಚ್ಚಿಡಿಸುವಂಥ ಈ ಕಳ್ಳತನದ ಸತ್ಯದ ಆ ಒತ್ತಡದಿಂದ ಆಚೆಗೆ ಬರ್ತಾನೆ. ಇಲ್ಲದೆ ಹುಚ್ಚ ಆಗ್ಬಿಡ್ತಿದ್ದ. He moved towards his loom and sat on the seat, believing as the strongest assurance of reality. He couldn't believe if it was real or not. He just went to his loom and sat on his working seat to confirm himself that it was real. And now all the false hopes that they had vanished, and he began to believe the idea of thief. Now ಕಳ್ದೋಗಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂದ್ಕೊಂಡ. Now he began to believe that there a thief might have come there, and now he wanted to cut the thief, and this made him to restore the gold. ಕಳ್ಳ ತಗೊಂಡೋಗ್ರೆ ಅವ್ನು ಹಿಡಿದುಕೋಬೋದು, ಗೋಲ್ಡ್ ವಾಪಸ್ ಕೊಡು ಅನ್ಬೋದು ಅಂದ್ಕೊಳ್ತಾನೆ. This thought strengthened him, and he opened the door, and it was raining heavily. The fog had turned into rain. ಹಿಮ ಮಳೆಯಾಗಿ ಬದಲಾಗ್ಬಿಟ್ಟಿತ್ತು. He could not track the footsteps. ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಅವನಿಗೆ ಹೆಜ್ಜೆ ಗುರುತುಗಳು ಯಾರು ಬಂದು ಹೋಗಿದ್ದಾರ ಗೊತ್ತಾಗ್ತಿಲ್ಲ. ಯಾವ ಟೈಮಲ್ಲಿ ತೀಫ್ ಬಂದಿರ್ಬೋದು ಅಂತ ಹುಡುಕ್ತಾನೆ. ಡ್ಯೂರಿಂಗ್ his absence in the daytime, when he returned, there was the door was locked. He had locked the door, and there was any inroad marks in the morning. On his return in the evening too, everything was same as he had left it. ಸಂಜೆ ವಾಪಸ್ ಬಂದ ಎಲ್ಲವೂ ಸೇಮ್ ಆಗಿತ್ತು. ಈಗ ಮಳೆ ಬಿದ್ದಿದ್ದರಿಂದ there was no mark of footsteps. ಯಾರು ಯಾವ ಕಡೆ ಹೋಗಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಅಂತ ಗೊತ್ತಾಗ್ತಿಲ್ಲ. Now he doubts, was it a thief who had taken the bags? I quote, ಕಳ್ಳ ತಗೊಂಡೋಗಿದ್ದಾನ, ಅಥವಾ was it a cruel power that no hands could reach, which had delighted in making him a second time desolate? Or was it the hand of some cruel power which he could not find out, which wanted to take delight in making him a second time desolate? ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಟೈಮ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಅವನನ್ನು ಒಂಟಿ ಮಾಡಿಬಿಟ್ಟಿತ್ತು ಅವನ ಕಳ್ತನ ಆರೋಪ ಹೊರಿಸಿ ಯಾವುದೋ ಕೈ. ಈಗ ಅದೇ ಕೈ, ಕಾಣದ ಕೈ ಯಾವುದಾದ್ರು ಕೆಲಸನ ಅಂತ ಅವನಿಗೆ ಡೌಟ್ ಬರುತ್ತೆ. ಐ ಅನ್ಕೋಟ್ ಹಿ ಟ್ರೈ ಟು ರಿಮೆಂಬರ್ ದ ನೈಬರ್ಸ್ ರಿಮಾರ್ಕ್ಸ್ ಆನ್ ಹಿಸ್ ಮನಿ. ಕಳ್ಳನ್ನು ಪತ್ತೆ ಮಾಡಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಯಾರ್ಯಾರು ಅವ್ನ ಹಣದ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ರಿಮಾರ್ಕ್ಸ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು ಜ್ಞಾಪಿಸ್ಕೊತಾನೆ. ಹಿ ರಿಮೆಂಬರ್ಡ್ ಜೆಮ್ ರಡ್ನೆ ಟಾಕಿಂಗ್ some light comments on his money and jestingly about his money. ತಮಾಷೆ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದ and he had irritated him. Marner thought that Jem Rodney could be found, might be the thief, and if he could find him, he might make him restore the money. ಅವನೇ ತೊಗೊಂಡೋಗಿದ್ರೆ ಅವನಿಗೆ ನಾವು ಈಸಿಲಿ ಅವ್ನು ವಾಪಸ್ ಕೊಡೋಕೆ ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದು ಅಂತ ಅಂದ್ಕೊಂಡ. he did not want to punish him. ಅವನಿಗೆ ಶಿಕ್ಷೆ ಕೊಡೋಕೆ ಇಷ್ಟ ಇಲ್ಲ. he only wanted him to return his gold, that's all. And the gold had left his soul, I quote, like a forlorn traveler on an unknown desert. ಯಾವುದೋ ಕಾಣದ ಒಂದು ಮರುಭೂಮಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ನಿಂತಿರುವ ಯಾವುದೋ ಒಂದು ಪ್ರಯಾಣಿಕನಂತೆ ಅವನೀಗ ನಿಂತುಬಿಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾನೆ, ಮಾಡಿಬಿಟ್ಟಿದೆ ಆ ಗೋಲ್ಡ್. he decided to proclaim his loss to the great people in the ವಿಲೇಜ್. ದೊಡ್ಡ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿಗೆಲ್ಲ ಹೇಳಬೇಕು, ದ ಕ್ಲರ್ಜಿಮ್ಯಾನ್, ಕಾನ್ಸ್ಟೇಬಲ್, ಸ್ಕ್ವೈರ್ ಕ್ಯಾಸ್, ಹೂ ವುಡ್ ಮೇಕ್ ಜೆಮ್ ರೋಡ್ನೆ ಸಂಬಡಿ ಎಲ್ಸ್ ಟು ರಿಟರ್ನ್ ದ ಸ್ಟೋಲನ್ ಮನಿ. ಯಾರಾದಾಗಿರಲಿ ಕಳ್ಳ, ಜೆಮ್ ರೋಡ್ನೆ ಆಗಲಿ, ಸಮ್ಮನ್ ಎಲ್ಸ್, ದೇ ವುಡ್ ಮೇಕ್ ಹಿಮ್ ಡೆಫಿನೆಟ್ಲಿ ಟು ರಿಟರ್ನ್ the money. Immediately he opened the door and rushed out in the rain without any cover on his face to the rainbow, which was a luxurious resort according to him, where he could find rich and stout husbands, and whose wives had superfluous stores of linen, and a place where he might find the powers of dignities of ರಾವ್ಲೆಯ ಎಲ್ಲ ಗಂತವ್ಯ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಸಿಗ್ತಾರೆ. ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ he could make his loss public most speedily there. ಅವನನ್ನು ಈ ಒಂದು ದರೋಡೆಯ ಬಗ್ಗೆ, ನಷ್ಟದ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಅವನು ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಬೇಗ ಹೇಳ್ಬೋದು ಅಂತ ಅಲ್ಲಿಗೆ ಹೋಗ್ತಾನೆ. ಬಟ್ ಆಲ್ ದ ಚೀಫ್ ಪರ್ಸನೇಜಸ್ ಹ್ಯಾಡ್ ಬೀನ್ ಟು ಮಿಸಸ್ ಆಸ್ಕರ್ಸ್ ಬರ್ತ್ಡೇ ಡ್ಯಾನ್ಸ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ದೇ ವರ್ ನಾಟ್ ದೇರ್. ಓನ್ಲಿ ದ lower class people were sitting there. In this way, Silas Marner was robbed by Dunstan Casey, and Marner was trying to find solution for his problem in his own way. And this would made him to develop a kind of friendship with the people of Ravli. I think I have understood the session. If you have any questions or doubts, post it in the comment box. Take care. Bye.